The big what-if shockers that could come in the Jodi Arias murder trial. Now, Arias is expected back on the stand on Wednesday to answer even more questions that the jurors have about her claim of self-defense in the killing of her boyfriend, Travis Alexander, who she stabbed 27 times and then shot him. And of course, you're going to see the testimony carried live as part of HLN's nonstop coverage of the trial. But Showbiz Tonight has got to ask, is it really a sure thing that she will be convicted of murder? Let's kick off our countdown with our number 3 what-if shocker. What if Jodi Arias beats the rap just like Casey Anthony did? Casey Anthony.
Not guilty.
O.J. Simpson.
Not guilty.
Robert Blake.
Not guilty.
Each accused of and acquitted of high-profile killings. What if Jodi Arias gets off too? She did tell Inside Edition that's what she expects.
No jury is going to convict me.
But Jodi should note, those infamous ex-murder defendants later faced civil suits, money problems, and lingering suspicion that they got away with murder. So even if Jodi gets an acquittal, she won't get a happy ending. So what if Jodi gets off? I mean, we know stranger things have certainly happened. Criminal defense attorney Midwin Charles is with me in New York. Attorney Darren Kavanaugh is in Hollywood. Darren is the host of Deadly Sins on Investigation Discovery. And Darren, to you first, what if Jodi gets off scot-free? I mean, we saw what happened with Casey Anthony, and then she had to go into hiding, of course.
Yeah, and I would think we'd see the same thing here, where hiding is probably the best strategy, although I'd like to see something like she and Casey Anthony get a place together, maybe a reality show, sort of a twist on Three's Company, but Mr. Roper keeps on dying over and over. I mean, it would just be a horror show and a PR nightmare for her.
There's your reality TV right there. Now, Midwin, I have to believe that she wouldn't be as much of a pariah as Casey Anthony, who, of course, was accused and acquitted of killing her child.
She might not be. I mean, you're right. Casey Anthony was accused of killing her child, which I think we all can agree is one of the most heinous things that anyone could ever do. But her trial is still garnering the same amount of interest and the same amount of scorn that Casey Anthony garnered. And I think that she's really, if she gets off, she is, as Darren says, going to be that pariah that no one likes to be around, and she's probably going to have to live her life in hiding, especially since what she did to this guy was so heinous. I mean, she stabbed him 27 times, but that wasn't enough, AJ. She had to go and shoot him as well.
They won't stop.
Yeah, she's not going to do well on any dating sites, AJ.
No,
we can
she
all
won't.
agree
dating
on that.
sites, but mark my words.
There'll be no eHarmony for her.
Mark my words, there will be plenty of offers from, shall we say, adult video makers, if you know what I'm saying.
Possibly.
If Jodi does get off, though, it will be because the jury actually believed her claim that she was defending herself from an abusive boyfriend, which is a point she keeps making during her testimony, which, of course, is carried here on HLN. Let's watch.
I think when he was choking me, my hands were free. He was over my torso. My arms were free. So I may have tried to push him off, or I didn't want to injure him. I just wanted him to get off of me. But that was very quick, and it didn't last long.
Now, Darren, this may sound like an outrageous notion, but if Jodi is found not guilty, do you see people then potentially sympathizing with her as a battered woman?
Well, it's so fascinating to me. I've been checking in on some social media, and it's a minority of people, to be sure, but there are people out there that sympathize with her, that characterize what happened as a lover's quarrel, and again, they're in the minority, but if just one of those people is on the jury, my goodness, it only takes one person to side with the defense to hang this whole thing up. So it certainly is a possibility that she could get off on this thing, AJ, or at least force the prosecution to have to do this one over, which is what would happen if there were a hung jury in a mistrial.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that specifically because, of course, an acquittal would be a huge victory for Jodi, but so would number 2 on our Showbiz countdown of what-if shockers, and that is, what if there is a hung jury?
He lunged at me right around the time that the gun went off.
Dramatic testimony. And now all it takes is for one holdout juror for Jodi Arias' trial to end in a hung jury and a possible mistrial. A friend of Jodi's tells Radar Online, quote, she is feeling pretty confident that there is going to be a mistrial. And that could mean a retrial, which means the most lurid trial in memory.
He also wanted to have sex on the freeway while driving.
Could get a sequel. Yeah. Can you even imagine that? A sequel? Midwin? Is that just what would happen if the jury can't agree on a verdict? We see the whole thing play out over again? I don't know if I can handle it.
Well, legally, that's what would happen, but I just can't see that happening here, AJ. I mean, the facts are just so bad. You're either going to go either way. She's either going to be not guilty or found guilty. I just can't see there being a mistrial. Mistrial, usually if there are errors or what have you. I just don't see that happening here. Not at all.
Midwin? I mean, I'm sorry. Darren, what about you?
Well, you know, all it takes is one strong soldier on the defense, just somebody to a fly in the ointment. And by the way, it did happen in another high-profile case, which was Phil Spector. If you think back to that case, it was an 11-1 verdict in favor of guilt the first time, and then they had to do the thing again. So this could play out over the long haul again.
Okay, but let's put that off for a moment, because there's another what if that I think obviously would be more shocking than a hung jury, more shocking than Jodi getting acquitted. It's our number one what if shocker in the Showbiz Countdown. What if Jodi Arias is convicted and executed? There's no question Jodi Arias is fighting for her life in this capital murder trial.
I have no memory of stabbing him.
But at one point before the trial, she also said this.
If I hurt Travis, if I killed Travis, I would beg for the death penalty.
What if that's what Jodi Arias winds up getting? What if she's convicted of murder and gets the death penalty? Last year, Arizona tied for second place behind Texas in the number of executions. And if Arias is executed, she would no doubt become one of the most infamous women America has ever put to death. And obviously that has a lot to do with why the interest in this particular case is so high. Midwin, is this scenario even at all likely? Jodi Arias getting convicted and then executed?
Listen, at this point, anything is possible. If she is convicted and is found guilty, yes, she'll be looking at the death penalty. And as you know, the death penalty, it takes a while for it to happen. I'm sure her attorneys will file appeals. It will clog up the system and clog up the courts. And so this isn't something that would happen right away. It would probably take years, if not maybe 10 or 9 years. That being said, Arizona is the second state to exercise the death penalty after Texas, at least the number of people done. And to have a woman be executed, I think, is a big deal, too. So people will be watching, and it will be riveting.
Yeah, I mean, Darren, to Midwin's point, if she's convicted and she's sentenced to death, we're looking at years. Really, could it be as many as 10 or more years for it actually to all be carried out?
Well, it really could. And this trial, by the way, is bifurcated. So we're looking forward to another mini trial just on the issue of penalty if she's convicted of first-degree murder at the guilt phase. So if they come back with a guilty verdict, those jurors aren't going home anytime soon when we are not even close to being done with Jodi Arias. But Midwin is correct. Arizona does tend to move things very quickly when it comes to executing their death row inmates. And generally speaking, when you look at the background of death row inmates, being a Caucasian female generally helps you, but not in Arizona. All of the women on death row are white women, so while that may be good in some states, not so much in Arizona.
God, it's just so fascinating as this thing rolls on. It's this great mystery, and we have to really consider all of those what-ifs as we watch it go forward.